Well, hello, Shiny Crafty People. Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. You may have noticed that I've moved around a little bit in the workshop. We've got the other direction coming through. And today I want to show you a different direction for making quilt squares. And here's a fun quilt square that I just did. And I'm going to show you how to do this start to finish. And here's the great part. This just uses two different colored pieces of fabric. And then you just do a series of cuts without actually measuring anything except how far you're going to cut. So I don't have to measure all these little squares separately. Literally, we're going to make put the two colors on top of each other, make a cut, flip some fabric around, sew them together, press it, make another cut, press, make another cut, press, make another cut, and we're going to literally make two of the same block at the same time with the two fabrics. They'll be sort of similar versions of each other, and then you can add them with a bunch of others and make a nice, really pretty big quilt. So why don't you join me down here at the cutting table, and I'll show you what we need to do to get started. So for this project, I'm going to need two pieces of fabric. Now I've picked these two that are both solids, but with a nice contrast in the shade so that it's going to be really easy to see. We'll need some kind of a measuring ruler that we can cut straight lines with, and then a rotary cutter to be able to do that. You could mark this with a pen and then cut with the scissors, but frankly, it's going to be a lot easier for you to do it by using a rotary cutter. So what we'll do is I've cut these two pieces 12 inches square, and there's not a right or wrong side on this particular fabric, but if you had a right or wrong side, you'd want to line it up. I'm going to go ahead and line these up directly. I literally cut them right on top of each other. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick a measurement and cut. And what I want to do is I want to create sort of a shape where there's a bigger square here and smaller pieces. So this is 12 by 12. I don't want to go right in the middle because that would be 6 by 6. So instead what I want to do is I want to make sure that I measure off of that, maybe like at the 8-inch mark. So I would get an 8 and a 4. That would be a third. So that would work for me. So I'll put my measurement on 8 inches. So I'm literally measuring, putting my 8-inch mark on the side here, and then that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches across, and I'll just make a cut. And then what I'll do is literally flip these over. So now I have, when I sew these together, these two will make a shape, and the ones underneath will also make a shape. So that's it. This is how we don't have to measure anything. I'm going to go to the machine and go ahead and stitch right down this side. So I need to set my machine up in the right way. So I'm using a presser foot that pretty much has a 1/4 inch width to it, but I'm going to go ahead and set my guide on the 1/4 inch line. And so whatever you have for a guide to be able to do 1/4 inch, the reason I like to use a guide is then I don't have to think about it at all. And since this entire thing's going to be done the exact same way, as long as I set the guide once and have it accurately, I'm going to be able to do it the same way every single time. So I'll line these up and begin to stitch all the way down the edge. I'll go to the second one the same way, and then we'll go to the iron. Now, if you find like I'm having the problem where it's, if I back up at the front, it's sort of like, it's dragging all of that material in, you could, like it's trying to pull it into the machine, you could just use an extra piece of fabric to start off on and then butt this right up next to it. It's a good idea, and especially if you're going to get into very intricate places where it's got to be super exact where it comes together. Okay, we're going to go over to the iron and iron these out, and I'll show you how we iron all of them the exact same way so that they'll get the exact same results. So we're here and we have these two. Because we very clearly have a light side and a dark side here, we're going to go ahead and iron everything or press everything to the dark side. And what that means is when we open this up, we want all the excess material to be facing the dark side. So it means actually the flat piece will be your light material. And the way to do this is to place it down, with the light side straight down and give it a good press. I like to use some steam. And then you'll open it up, leaving that part down, leaving the entire thing down so you're not lifting it up, and then come in and do the same thing, press that open. So because I left the light side flat against, when it flipped over, that was flat, and now it's got the fold over here. Let's do the same thing on the other one. Now the other one will be a little different because remember we're putting the light side down. So we put the light side straight down, and it stays, every bit of the light material stays flat on the ironing board, and you're just lifting it. You're not lifting the whole thing and then flipping it because it might flip this underneath. You're just flipping the top, and I put my fingers in there and kind of finger press it open. All right, those two pieces are done, and we can go back and stack them up and cut again. All right, so we have these pieces together, and we're gonna stack them up exactly straight right on top of each other so that those lines line up exactly. So I'm checking my lines here to make sure these line up exactly next to one another. And actually what you can do, it's better to do is put them face to face. I should have done that. So I'm gonna put them face to face, and what you'll notice, because this light side is pushing this way on this one, and because down here the light side is pushing that way, these will nest into each other. You can actually lay them on top of each other and feel the material nest into itself. So that if I try to push this, it won't go any further because, let me show you, there's a hump where this dark material is, and there's a hump where this dark material is, and they kind of lock into each other. So I get those properly lined up. All of that is lined up. And I'm gonna do the same measurement I did before. I'm gonna cut this at 8 inches over. So I will put this on, and I will go to my, now you'll notice I'm getting a little bit of material. Doesn't matter, we're gonna trim this straight later. So I put my 8-inch mark on the side. I'm gonna line it up. I'm gonna use that line to make sure we're kind of straight across there, and I'll cut again. Okay. So now what we'll do is, again, we'll flip these over. So now when I sew these two together, I'm gonna get this color. And when I sew the bottom two together, I'm gonna get that shape. All right, so what I wanna do is lay this right side up, this one right side down. I'm gonna lock those seams in together, right here, and just stitch right down the edge. And we'll do the same thing on this one. All right, I'm gonna sew these two together. Again, making sure that my point where the two come together is the part I'm concerned about, making sure that these lock into each other. And you'll see as I open that up, now I have a point where those two come together. We'll move that one aside and do the same thing on the other side. And again, I'm just lining these up so that they lock together right here. Now, it might want to flip over at the bottom, so I just lifted it up and made sure that my light material was going away. And again, as I open that one up, you'll see our point as it comes together. We'll go iron these as well, and you'll see where we're going next. Now, these might be a bit problematic because you'll notice that right now we can't really go to the dark. We have to pick a side to go to the dark if we wanted to, because if we went to the dark here, we're not gonna be able to go to the dark there. You can clip in the middle and do that if you want. My suggestion is to pick a side that you're going to go to, and probably to the more majority of the dark here. So that's what I would do, is I would lay that part down flat. An advanced technique would be to clip in the middle and then do it that way. But frankly, I think that's a little too advanced. So we'll do that and open it up by hand. We just want to make sure that we do them all the same way. All right, that one looks good. And again, we'll do the same thing with this one. We want to put down the larger side down. Now, if you were using a really light material here that was almost like a white and you didn't want any of that dark to show through, you should probably clip in the middle. But we're happy with this. So now I have those two, and we can go do our next part. And this is where it really gets quite unusual in the look. All right, we have these two done. Now what I'm going to do is line them up opposites to each other like this. All right. This is where we get to some really fun changes that we're going to do, which is I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut sort of a 1-inch strip out of it, and I'm going to line those up, make sure they're put together correctly. And I'm going to come over to the 7-inch mark. No, actually, I'm going to go to my 8-inch mark again. Line my 8-inch mark up. And I'm going to cut, but I'm not going to move anything. So this is important to know. I'm going to make my 8-inch mark. Okay, and then I'm going to come back and do another 1.5 inch. I'll put the 1.5 inch mark along that stitch right there, along that line that I just cut, and cut again. So what I want to do with this, I'll take this one off the top and this one off the side. I'm going to flip this one over and remove that. So now what I will do is I will sew these 3 pieces together right here. This to this, this to this. So let me start with these two. I'm going to stitch them together, and then I'll iron it just like we did before, and then I'll stitch it to this one. So what I've got here now are 2 mirrored, not mirrored, but opposite squares. You'll see here. So what I can do with these is, now that I've made those in this way, now my goal is to cut them to where I'm going to put a strip from here to here. Now the difference is I can't so what I need to do is I need to lay them together, but you're going to notice that now we're not laying the exact shape opposite one another because we've changed it. But I am going to make sure that the lines line up through here, line up through there. And now I can use a measurement off of this stitch to decide where to cut here. Now, remember I did 8 inches over, so I'm going to try to stay close to that, and then another 1.5 inches. So I'll get really close to that 8 inches there. Using this stitch line across the center to make sure it's straight left and right. I'll do my mark there, then move over 1.5 inches. Now, this is to keep you from having to make all those little squares and whatever else, but you can still do that. I just like this technique because I get to play with different ideas. So now what we've got is I'll remove the top one from this here, like we did before. I'll move the top one from there, and then I will flip this one around and put that, no, wrong one. No, wait a second, what did I do wrong? Oh, I did cut it exactly the wrong way. Look at that. I actually did that the wrong way. I love this. I love when I make a mistake like that. That's not really gonna work, is it? Well, I will show you in a minute what I did wrong, because that was not a good move to do it that way. I needed to leave this center one. I needed to spin it the other direction. All right, I'm gonna redo this and show you what I meant to do in just a moment. What I need to do is to be able to move one of these to the side here, like that, and then bring a piece from this side over here. So what I need to do for this is go ahead and line these back up. I'll get them lined up exactly. And I'm actually going to trim this edge over here. This was a move I should have done before. I'm going to trim this edge over here just to get it straight. Now I've got it lined up straight on my table, so I can come in and give it a trim to make sure it's all completely straight. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about 1.5 inches off of this end. Okay. What that's going to allow me to do then is and I'll move one of these out of the way. That's going to allow me to bring in this strip to this side, bring this strip to this side, and then finish it with the piece that should have finished it on this side. Now I have this interesting square that's been created by doing it in that particular way. And look at how intricate this is. And I'll get the same exact thing out of the other pieces that are pulled together. So what I need to do is I need to sew these two together and then these two sets together. So I will sew these two pieces right here, and they all lock in because I've done all of the flip and folds the right way. And the same thing here, I'll put these together as well. Let's do go to the machine and do those. Okay, I've got both those pieces done, and I'm going to just put them together and go ahead and iron the rest of this. Sorry, I'm going to sew the rest of this. My needle came unthreaded. While I rethread this, one of the interesting things that I just was looking at is they don't quite come together completely at the end. And I want to point out that that's okay, because we're going to trim this entire thing up size-wise to make sure it's accurate. So we're not worried about it. The biggest part is where the two seams come together, that we're actually lined up accurately and that they are nesting into one another, and that we're using the correct seam allowance along the side to keep everything even. And again, here at the end, you can see that we're off a little bit, but I'm going to trim all of that. So what I'm going to do now is open this up over at the iron and go ahead and give it one more press to completely flatten this out. So here we are again. I can go ahead and give it I can lay it down, flatten it out, give it a nice press. Now I think the tension on my machine is a little bit off, and it's kind of making things twist a little bit, but I'm making the best of it here. You might want to adjust your machine, and in fact, you'll notice this one wasn't quite as perfect as I would like it to be. You'll see how it's twisting a little bit in here, but you can come in and adjust. You can change. I could take out all the stitching and start again. But I love this design. Let me show you how that we're going to trim this up to a better size, and then you can start making some yourself. So this is a situation where a square would come in super handy. You're going to notice that this one has a lot of stuff on it, because in fact we use this near when we're spraying stuff in our glue room. So I'm going to show you kind of with it, but it's going to be hard to see, and then I'll actually show you how I can use a tool more like this to do the same thing. The nice part about this is I could use the measurements here to not look at the outside edge, but instead to look at the interior lines. So I might say I want to trim this up by putting the 2-inch mark right here along this line, and that way I would get a 2-inch piece, or maybe I would go 2 1/4 and line that up. that would actually give me about a 9-inch square if I chose to do that. Or I can put the center mark in. Better though probably would be for me to say, okay, this is gonna be wider this direction. So let me look at what the shorter side is. This width is shorter than this. You'll see if I fold it, it's off by quite a bit difference. So I wanna make sure I find whatever the widest measurement I can get out of all of my squares this way is. And since this edge is pretty much straight along this here, I can use that as my mark. So if I did this, I could actually get an 8.5-inch square cut, but maybe more likely I want a 9-inch square. So what I'm gonna do is use my measurement on my table, and I'm putting it here at what is 43 on my table. And so I know that means I need to go up to 52 on my table and see how there's just enough along this edge. So if I cut that off, that gives me a 9-inch strip across here. Now I don't really want to cut anything off of this edge because it's pretty tight. So I'll again come here. Now I need to straighten that out. So I'll bring it over a little bit and I'm going to cut a straight line. Now I'm going to make sure that my fabric is straight. My lines are straight on the top and the bottom so that when I use my right hand cut here and cut off, now I know that these are both 90-degree corners, and then I will go to my 9-inch mark. So it's at 43. I'm going to go to 52 and cut that off on the other side. And once I cut this, I will have a 9-inch square that I can then use in a quilt. And if I did a bunch of them all together at the same time with that, maybe different colors or whatever else, I would end up with all of these 9-inch squares that I could then put together in an unusual design, and it would look like I had measured all of these squares out differently. It would give me that design. And there you have it, folks. That is that unusual quilt square that I did for you, and you can see from the back all the different pieces and parts. I hope you try this kind of thing, maybe not with this many different pieces. Right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, there's 20 different pieces now in this square because of the way we did it, but I didn't measure virtually any of them. They're almost all done just by measuring a couple of strips and how I'm gonna cut it apart. And you can get this very unusual look. You could do this with, imagine if you did this with a bunch of different colors and you would get this color block quilt that looks like you spent all this time putting it together. Well, that's the block for today that I designed for you, that we did just for fun. I literally learned right as you did it with me, and I hope you had a great time. Until next time, folks, why don't you like and subscribe to this channel and stay crafty. Bye for now. All right, I don't know if I could recreate that because I didn't write down any of the measurements. I guess I'll have to watch the video again.